higher classic movie that I watched recently was The Stranger, Orson Welles' 1946 drama, which he co-wrote, directed, and plays the lead. It's the story of the mysterious Charles Kincaid, a professor about to marry the daughter of a Supreme Court justice in the beautiful town of Harper, Connecticut. But he has a terrible secret, namely that he is an escaped Nazi war criminal who had systematically destroyed any trace of his past before fleeing Europe a couple of years earlier. However, a Nazi hunter, played by Edward G. Robinson, is on his tail and is slowly wheedling out the truth as the net tightens around the ex-Mr. Kincaid. It's an interesting concept for a story because Wells made the movie to prove that he could make a real movie, that it wasn't just going to be obscure art house nonsense like Citizen Kane or The Magnificent Ambersons, but he could make a regular movie that made money. So, although this film was originally to have been directed by John Huston, Wells stepped in when Huston joined the army, and the result is a classic, almost B-picture type programmer that wound up becoming the highest grossing film of Wells' directing career. It's a really intriguing story. I really like the parallels that you can draw with it being like a Columbo episode, because the main character is the villain. We see him as a murderer. We know what he's done, and his background he's trying to cover up. And then in comes this sort of shambling, unassuming detective figure, Edward G. Robinson's Nazi hunter, Mr. Wilson, who wins over people with just natural charm and good humor, but has that strange abrasive relationship with the murderer. So it's a really interesting forerunner to that kind of how catch 'em concept. I really enjoyed it overall. I didn't twig initially that it was actually directed by Wells as well, because I wasn't paying attention when the caption came up. But it does bear hallmarks of his writing, of his directing rather, of the deep focus photography, of that very rich black and white imagery, and recurring visual motifs. Kincaid is obsessed with clocks, and he's currently restoring the church clock. And his his mania almost for secrecy is that which ultimately undoes him, and it's the way the other characters also form a web, and also sort of how Wilson is able to coordinate them into a team to prevent Kincaid from killing his fiancée, played by Loretta Young, and sort of staging accidents and things to keep her away from him. I thought that was a really interesting twist on the story. But there's so much visually engaging about this that I think it balances nicely with the strength of the story, the strength of the characters, and the little sketches of ordinary small town life, like the grocer who will play you double or nothing for the cost of your shopping in return for a game of checkers. But it's a really great film, I think. It's sort of something of a forgotten Wells film, because it's much less of a stylistic work, an artistic work, than Citizen Kane or his Shakespeare films or The Trial. But even so, I think I can understand why it's his highest grossing film. And yeah, I enjoyed it a great deal.